Hey everybody, my name is Ivica. Thank you so much for being with me on the latest episode of I'm Gaming podcast. This is a podcast about the video game industry, entrepreneurship, gaming nostalgia, new horror films based on Stieven King novels, and many more cool things I find to be in the same realm of business and creative ventures. Like always, first and foremost, a huge thanks goes to my Patreon supporters. Without you and your generous monthly donations, I would not be able to continue making these podcast episodes. So thank you all so much for being here month in and month out. Everyone else, please check out my Patreon supporters in the description below and see their really cool, really interesting, amazing ventures that they're engaging with. Now, like I said, this is a podcast episode about Salem's Lot, a really new, actually a horror from this year, that's based on the novel of Stieven King called again Salem's Lot, a kind of classical horror tale that has now been created into a movie. Previously it was adapted several times, but mostly as a mini-series because there's a lot of stuff going on there. In this case, the decision was made to create a single feature-length film, not even that long actually, that is basically the whole adaptation of Salem's Lot. First of all, I have to say that I really liked it, even though that I knew that so far critics find it kind of polarizing. Some liked it, some didn't like it. I enjoyed it throughout, mainly, and this is basically the kind of focus point of my episode here, because of its simplicity in its approach to horror. In previous years there was a lot of really cool horror films. I talked about some of them, especially from the kind of indie development scene or even mainstream like A24 companies that are willing and able to take a bit more risks than your standard big, let's say AAA or premium studio from the US or other major market. In this case, we saw with smaller studios, smaller productions, really innovative stuff, going back almost to the late 2000s and early 2010s. Who can forget films like It Follows and so forth. Salem's Lot is not a small film, it's a pretty big film. It has a really good cast of veteran actors, of people who are really excellent. People like Bill Camp, for example, who is an incredible actor for sure. He was never kind of the lead guy, but his ability to present so many different kinds of characters is amazing. And other just as good actors, including kind of the main cast of Louis Pullman and Mackenzie Leigh. And the story is pretty straightforward. It's basically the same as the Stieven King novel. An author comes back to a small town which is basically getting besieged by a presence of a vampire who slowly takes over the town and creates his minions who then attack others and so forth. Really straightforward, really direct, really clear, and in many ways what I want to kind of point out, this is kind of that vintage horror, not in a gothic sense, but more in a sense of like the 70s and 80s, where horror films had that kind of embedded simplicity to them, being that people saw them primarily as films for the younger audience, the audience who won't like take notes and focus very much on the film itself, the plot. They're more there for the scares and for the kind of fun ride that it provides. Over the years that kind of diverged into many different things. A lot of really good recent horror films are really like cerebral and in-depth and include a lot of ideas, even like analog ideas towards social problems and so forth, just like Piles films, who are amazing, even though I don't like all of them. But movies like, of course, Get Out and Us are very layered and have a lot of meaning to them, even if you don't like them. I didn't like, for example, Us. There's a lot of stuff going on there, and it's really, let's say, high quality in terms of its narrative. In this case, Salem's Lot, just like the original novel, is dense in terms of characters and character developments, but the film, being that it lasts only for 2 hours, disregards that and places the focus on kind of that classical story. There's a monster, we're making a team against the monster, we're defeating the monster the best we can. Of course, a lot of those in the team are lost during the way. And through that, and of course fantastic photography, the film uses the concept of light to its maximum potential. Really, the idea that like crosses and holy places and holy objects are illuminated in the film is something that's present in the novel, but the film really doubles down on it, and it pays off because the outcome is really appealing and really nice to watch. Basically, that combined with, like I said, a simple, straightforward and streamlined story provides a really, for me, appealing kind of release from any expectations of having kind of density of the plot, the narrative, the characters that are kind of ambiguous and then slowly turn into something that is something else. None of that is present. Everything is really straightforward and it works in a really appealing manner. Not everyone liked it, but the kind of baseline appeal is there, and I think it's really useful to consider that baseline appeal, that kind of vintage feel of simple horrors, let's call them like that, not in any derogatory terms of the word, but like very clean, narratively clean and compact horror stories, horror narrative is useful for other media as well, especially for game development, where of course horror gaming is a huge part of narrative development in video games for all kinds of projects, from AAA, AA to the smallest indie projects, even user-generated content from, like, say, Fortnite Creative. There's a huge horror community of horror gamers. All of that is open to that idea of simple narratives, of clean, simple, focused narratives, which, if they're delivered well, more than make up for their apparent, quote-unquote, narrative simplicity, because it's simply a well-crafted, fun, engaging ride. Even when it's kind of bizarre or grotesque or unnerving, it's still something that kind of pulls you through its course and delivers a satisfying end, which is what Salem Lot does for me, in my case at least, and I think it has a big value in that sense for anyone interested in narrative development, as it offers a way to craft complex stories, because Salem Lot as a book is complex, there's a lot of stuff going on there, but it can be boiled down to its basic elements that are basically needed and useful in the wider sense, and they make up for any of, like I said, there's not so much focus on character development or their paths through the film or the novel. In this case, things just like basically happen. All of those work more than well for the end experience, and the same goes for video games, other narrative process, it might be comic books or anything else, as horror does not have to be really smart, it has to be engaging, has to be appealing, it has to be compact, in terms of not having loose ends, not having silly elements or things that are contradictory and stuff like that. All of that is lost or not present in Salem's Lot, which is good, and the ending is really plain but very, very stable and good. There you have it. That's my take on Salem's Lot. Hopefully you get a chance to see the movie. I would love to hear what you thought about it. Hopefully this makes sense in terms of narrative development if anyone is developing or thinking of developing horror narratives. Again, thanks again for being here. Check out my Patreon supporters. Check out my Patreon page, of course. If you'd like to support me, that would be awesome. I would love to support you in return. Check out my books on Amazon, including my latest novel, which is called The Sons of 901. And of course, the cheapest, easiest, fastest way to support me is to subscribe to my channel and be here for my new videos. That's all for me. Thanks again for watching. My name is Ivica. Have a great week and I'll talk to you in precisely 7 days from now. Until then, bye bye.